I'm really excited tonight to welcome Todd Olson. Todd is the co-founder and CEO of Pendo. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of Pendo. They're a leader in the product space. Before that, he was a VP of product at Rally. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with Rally software as well. He's a chief scientist at Borland. He's the author of this exciting new book, The Product-Led Organization. I've read it, it's great. His Twitter handle is @TOlson, if you want to tweet during his talk. And again, Todd's going to be sharing with us advice on a new way of delivering product related to being product-led. So with that, what I'd love to start out with is, your new book, The Product-Led Organization, just came out 2 weeks ago from Wiley. So I'd love to just hear the story of what led you to write this book.
Yeah. So Wiley initially reached out to me asking me to write about basically a data-driven product manager. And, obviously a lot of passion around analytics and data. Pendo's got a long reputation. And my first reaction was like, look, I'd love to write a book and I'm really interested in data, but I don't think data is the only story. Data is a means to an end. And you have to be asking yourself, what's the end you're trying to get to? And I said, we think the end is being product-led. And at first, why? Like, we never heard of this product-led thing. And like, are you sure that's where people are going to care? Like, first experience with the publisher.
Yes.
But, so I would say that it took some convincing, but yeah, look, I think this is the future. I think when I talk to more and more customers, like using these techniques to have the product create more automation and really offload more of what I call the human activities of a business to a product is just the way things are going to be. And now, of course, post COVID, and I wrote the book pre-COVID, we see all these things being digitized or the digital transformation. And a lot of what that is like, that's maybe the business person's term for product-led is like digital transformation or digital-led. But I think this is going to be just a critically important movement for the next 10 to 20 years. So I think we're going to see just a ton of this. And I think the stories and experiences just like all kind of fell into place to write this book. So.
That sounds great. Yeah, no, it's funny to hear that. We have the same editor there, so it's funny. And yeah, I think it is like, is this a thing or not? And I think I've been hearing about product-led for several years now. So it feels like it's really getting some momentum and some steam and product ops as well. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And just real quick, what was the process like of writing the book? What was your experience writing it?
Well, because it took a while to convince them the product-led thing, we did almost rewrite the entire book. Wow. They finally did agree. Because I started with all the analytics sections, so it's pretty analytics heavy in section 1. But I started writing some of the other chapters anyway, and then everything kind of fell into place. And it was good. It takes a while. I had help, lots of help along the way, in a variety of ways. And I think for me, the Christmas break was very, very helpfmore, just because it was like one of the few times. I do have a day job, so like finding actual time where I can just sit, right? Yeah, I don't have a lot of space in my calendar, but like Christmas was very useful. I had lots of blocks in my calendar. I just sat down and got through a lot. So.
Cool. Yeah, no, you're a busy CEO of a high growth company. So carving out the time can be tough. I had similar things, just carving out time, because you can't get interrupted. You need like uninterrupted time, I found, like, just so you could focus. And that's hard to come by. So that's great. Cool. All right. Well, so let's say, you gave a lot of great advice. I saw a lot of positive comments on Twitter in the chat. So let's say somebody says, Todd, this all sounds awesome. I want to do this in my company. What are some of the top challenges you see companies or product teams run into when they try to be more product-led? What do you say?
Oh, look, one of the common things I hear is that when you're trying to offload a task that traditionally a human was doing, there's often people don't want to let it go. People are worried the product isn't going to do as good of a job as our humans did, and also there's a little bit of fear, like, hey, if I stop doing this is my job, what am I going to do with that time that I was doing for this activity? And that's where it's just helping coach organizations is like, we you want your humans not doing low value, high volume activities. You want them doing high value, low volume activities. So shift them to those activities. You still should need the same amount of humans. Maybe over time would drive more efficiencies in your business, but like, this is not something to fear. This is the future. It's a better experience. But I think that fear of the automation fear, et cetera, I think is one of the biggest barriers.
Got it. Okay. Sounds good. Cool. And you mentioned at the very end there, you mentioned 3 companies that were kind of good examples. I'm wondering if you could talk more about, like, if there's one particular company that has applied a lot of the advice that you shared today, just go a little deeper in talking about them, just more about what you've seen from them, what's worked for them, what results they've seen.
Yeah. I mean,
it can be one of those 3. It's fine if you want to go deeper.
Yeah, no, I'll actually, one of the companies that's a big company that I did talk a little bit about that I love to use an example, product led, is Atlassian. I think because it's been around for a long time, and I think what they're so famous for is when they went public, and even to this day, so they don't have salespeople. Now, I think on their enterprise products, they maybe had to add, a salesperson or 2, but for years they operated largely without a salesperson. You would download the product, you throw it in your desk, you get it set up, and you would go. So you didn't have to interact really with a human at all. Maybe over time you had support issues or had some sort of contracting issue you did, but I think they're one of the most powerful examples of how you can build a really, really efficient business. And if you look at their model, and Wall Street's become accustomed to this, that product-led business typically spend higher percentages of their, or have a higher percentage of R&D to revenue percentage than non-product-led businesses, but they typically have much lower in sales. So it's just a really, really powerful way to think about shaping your company. So that's probably what highlights. I mean, I also love to give the example of Tesla. I think Tesla is a fantastic consumer. If you've ever interacted with that company, like actually getting a human on the phone is basically impossible, and getting humans are not easy to come by. So it's all product led for good or for bad, and it's mostly good. So
that's awesome. That's hilarious. Talk about revolutionizing the sales thing. One of my friends got a Tesla. He's like, you order on the website. Like you go, I went with him to the store here in Stanford Mall. It's like, great. If you're ready to go, then just log on to the website and order. I'm like, okay, I'll make a 5-figure purchase on this website. It's kind of
it's crazy, isn't it?
Right? It's probably the biggest ticket checkout item anyone's ever done online. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, and you bring up Atlassian. You're right. They're the OG of this kind of SaaS self-service. That's a good point. And it's funny to see the ends of the spectrum. I've seen some enterprise companies are like all in on sales team, right? It's like on their website, it's like you can't sign up at all, you can't get a demo, call us for a demo, email for a demo. So big, I consider it like a firewall, right? And then you have the other extreme, like you said, it's just all self-service and you can't do it. Like what is your advice on that? I mean, I've seen a lot of different patterns. I'm just wondering what's your advice on that patterns that would work best?
Well, that's very good. Yeah, well, they're all good questions, but I think this is an interesting one in that different things are going to work for different businesses, and I also apply no judgment generally in my life. Try to live that role as well to companies. So maybe you need to have a sales-led sales motion because people are really, really confused. In that case, maybe you want a product-led onboarding and customer success movement because that's the way you need to do automation. So I would say go to the area that's least political. Like some of our customers start with self-service and support. They go to the support team. They're like, "What's your number one reason people call you?" Like, "Hey, let's put something in a product to like stop people from calling us." That's the way to do product-led support. Then maybe be way less controversial and political and convincing your sales team to give up the sales motion. Got it. Now it could be a free trial, and it could be that product-led growth to the top end of the funnel. It just depends on where you're at. I mean, sales team they can wield a lot of power because they own the number. So you have to be very cognizant of that. The other thing to be careful with sales teams is sales comp. But one thing I know, some companies that have gone to freemium models or even product-led sales models, they just comp their sales reps even if they don't need to. You know, like anything that came in, we'll just pay you on whether you close it or not. It's expensive at first, but it's a way to like get people on the product-led train.
Got it.
Right? So sometimes you may need to do some hybrid models. So
yeah. Speaking of fear, your other point about, hey, people lose, you know, salespeople would be afraid of that if they're potentially, if you're gonna automate that. So yeah, okay, great. And then, you know, speaking of product-led growth, you obviously been at the helm of Pendo. You've been growing like crazy. You've been around for a while. I'm curious, what growing pains or transitions have you been through as you've tried to become more product-led over time at Pendo?
Well, a lot. I mean, I think we've ourselves have had, you know, part of our, you become a victims of your own success. Like if you're saying sales channel is working, like it's hard to mess with something that's not working. So you know, we've experimented on and off with free. I mean, I think, but a lot of our focus is on product-led onboarding. How do we drive a good user experience post-close? How do we deliver an amazing self-service experience? We actually have a self-service score we rank ourselves on, and we've seen it go up over the past, past year actually has been a focal area. At a Pandemonium, you asked about Pandemonium, we relaunched a free version of our product. It's out there now. It's the numbers look pretty good for it. So we are trying to add another channel to our product-led growth strategy as well. So it is something that's part of our journey. But yeah, you get this fear, like from sales, like even we do. We sell product-led, but like it's you know, like people feel like you took something away that's theirs in commission. So like it's a real thing. But you know, a decent chunk of interacting with us is product led. So, and we kind of constantly look at other ways where we can do it. I think we have some novel ideas for next year. So, but yeah, it's a constant evolution.
Okay, great, awesome, cool. And then, you know, I really like some great tips. The opt-in beta, the opt-out beta, those sound great. And as you brought it up, I'm like, gosh, you don't see it from as many companies as you would think. You do see certain companies doing that. And I'm just wondering like how you decide which to use and what metrics do you look at to decide when you flip the switch. I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit more about those tactics, because I think that's something that people might be interested in trying to do themselves.
Yeah, look, I think it depends on the level of change that you're looking at, whether you want to drive opt-in versus opt-out. If the change you don't feel like is like totally disruptive, like opt-out may be the way to go because you're throwing someone a new experience, you know. So it really depends on like how different it is from the prior experience. And if you feel like it's generally just similar, just better, then I'd probably go for that, depending on the level of change. On the opt-in, you're testing a few things, whether your description of what the new thing is enough to click the button, as well as you're checking the experience. So I think making sure you're really tight on what the communication is. You may, for opt-in, need to create incentives like, hey, if you do this, you'll get blah, blah, blah in return for it. I've seen that done as well to get people to do it. But I think if you're comfortable with the change, I would err towards the opt-out. Like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? People hit the button. Really? They're going to leave you for that? You know, and it's like I didn't include it in this deck, but one of the techniques I have done, and I don't know if I talked about it in industry. Maybe you and I talked about it, but I have just released things, deleted things from products.
Right. We talked about that in the panel.
I have. I've done it once by accident and once on purpose. but the funny thing is that the once by accident was the first time it happened to me, and no one noticed. So like, well, shit. Now I'm going to do this intentionally from now on. So every once in a while, if I'm really passionate about something, I will remove it. It hasn't happened a little while at Pendo, but in the early days of Pendo, it happened a bunch. You know, we would just literally take things out of the product and see what happened. And you know, especially if it's a trial or a beta or something like that, I feel like you have a lot more freedom to experiment. So it's a great way to experiment. If someone's willing to call you and say, hey, I want that thing back, that's amazing feedback. I'll take that every day.
Hey, I need login, Todd. Todd, login. What happened, man? That's good. Yeah, that's good. That's funny. How did you realize that you had deleted it or removed it?
Yeah, a bunch of people start calling, so support,
Oh, okay.
It's
Got it.
like,
Okay,
oh,
got it.
whoops,
I see.
whoops, like,
Okay.
oh yeah, I forgot we got rid of that thing. We didn't know.
Nice, cool. And I also like, along similar lines, the prioritization, the voting mechanisms, going into the different techniques of the different voting mechanisms. And one thing I was wondering is, do you ever weigh the votes differently or slice them in a certain way to analyze it? Or is like every vote always have the same weight? Do you do it by industry or other segmentation attributes?
Yeah, look, I there's a lot of ways to do prioritization. You can do it by revenue, revenue potential.
Right.
Sometimes in the book I talk about some of the SAFE techniques, and that's scale agile framework for those who don't know it, where like you can rank 3 different measures, like user business value versus risk reduction, opportunity enablement, and then timing. I've talked a lot. The product talks about time priority. I'd love it as a way to think about priority, like what's the cost of delay of like missing a window or something like that. I love thinking that way. It's one of my favorite ways to prioritize, but that's probably more of an internal metric than it is like asking users to vote. Maybe internal stakeholders. I'd have them vote on time, and I've done that actually in sessions with them. So, but yeah, you may want to weigh. Getting too fancy.
Yeah.
It starts to you can erode. And like, how many times have I let product managers do this, and like they'll stick our largest customer on every single one of their requests. Next thing you know, it's like $10 million on all the things this person and then the other product managers catch on quickly. They scratch their head. Next thing, that large customer somehow magically shows up on all their lists. Okay, so you're saying our large customer wants everything. Well, maybe that's not a shock. Maybe we should just remove that out.
Right. Yeah, let me go into Salesforce and find the biggest customer so I can put that on my business case justification. Look at that's funny.
Happens all the time. So
yeah, I got it. Cool. Okay, great. Awesome. And then last question for you is, I love how you're once we started talking about voting, like, hey, let's actually show the results to our customers. Let's make it kind of transparent. And you were advocating, it sounded like similar thing with roadmaps. So I'm just wondering if you could talk a little more about, because you don't see companies that up, like Trello puts their roadmap, famously put their roadmap publicly, and some companies do this, but you don't see as much transparency with companies to their customers on things like prioritization of features or roadmaps. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that there, and like, can you be true transparent? Are there any things to watch out for, gotchas, if you're trying to do that?
Look, I think it's all about the company and your core values. I mean, we have. The screenshot I showed was our public facing roadmap for feedback. Feedback is a road mapping product, so it'd be kind of like hypocritical for us to not publish our roadmap. So it is out there in the world. So I think that's great. Probably always some things you can hide or keep internal if you don't want them to show. Like you may have a roadmap item for like, fix this customer subscription that we accidentally deleted their data or something like that. Like that one you may want to throw in a public. But I think by and large, having something out there for public commentary is super, super powerful. And if you've got a development process that you have confidence in, then yeah, I absolutely would put it out there. Now, if you have something where like you literally can't ship software and you're going to erode confidence from your users and customers, then I mean, I'd probably fix that first, but having public roadmaps is not your first problem.
Right. Yeah.
But if you have confidence, yeah, throw it out there. I don't think it hurts. I mean, because look, what's the worst thing can happen? Something changes and someone asks you, and guess what you get them to do? Describe the why behind the change, which as a product manager, that's our favorite job, is describing the why behind something happening. It's like, well, great question. This changed because this seems even a lot more important because that's blah, blah, blah. I love that. I love having that question, anyway.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. The longer I work in product, I think the single question that's the most important question is why behind everything. So I totally agree with you there. So awesome. Cool. Well, let's wrap up our Fireside Chat. Thanks a lot for a great Fireside Chat. What I'm going to do now is open it up to Q&A. And actually, I have a few people in chat. I got some questions queued up, but first let me get it so that people can unmute themselves. Okay, cool. So now everybody can unmute yourself. And if Craig Fisk, I don't know if you're here, he wanted to talk about Customer Advisory Board. Craig, are you there? Feel free to.
I'm here.
There you go. Great.
Thanks, Ted.
Hop in, ask your question.
Yeah, great
Thanks.
talk. Yeah, I like the point about customer advisory boards, and I wondered if Todd had any examples of when that went right or went wrong.
Yeah, yeah, I've seen it both ways. I'll tell you, at one time in my career, I was my favorite customer advisory board, and this is what I did. I let the customer advisory board co-create the board. So we did a team building session with all the customers. They all got together. They all created a shared mission statement for the customer advisory board. They created a shared set of working agreements. And then we ran it according to the working agreements. And that way, there was no ambiguity over like how frequently you're going to meet, what the actual time commitment was, what all those sorts of things. So I think it's critical in those scenarios too to have customers with like the people need to be sort of equal levels within businesses. Like I've seen some people like, oh, we want to have an executive advisory board. Well, frankly, executives sometimes don't provide the best feedback. They're pretty far removed from things. So like, but maybe you want to have more thought leadership stuff, so maybe that'll work. Mixing and matching levels of hierarchy does not work. I mean, having so other anti-patterns like having no shared set of working agreements does not work. You need to have consistency. People need to like show up to meetings. If a customer can't show up to meeting, kick them off the advisory board. Like have rules. Like those are the things that work really, really, really well. So
great, thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Craig, for your question. And then next up, we have Scott Rim. Scott, feel free to hop in here. Great. Welcome, Scott.
Hey, Todd. Yeah, thanks for the great talk. So going back to your the different controls that you had between the different development phases, between like internal, limited beta, beta, etc. In terms of seeing those implemented, in terms of controls that you would have between those different gates, is there a successful way that you've seen those kind of implemented, either in Pendo or in other companies that you've found to be, really effective?
Yeah, you broke up a little bit. I'm not sure it's you or me, but
I think I got his question from the chat. Yeah. I think you broke up, Scott. I can say, how have you implemented or seen those implemented successfully? What kind of criteria make sense? What signals might be indicators to move forward? What might be signs to move back? So, sorry, Scott, your audio was just a little garbled there.
Yeah. So, I mean, here's a really, really easy hack that I've done plenty of times. Run a micro survey, at various times. So, often, and you could do it even in internal stakeholders, like how much does this, meet your needs or meet the goals, et cetera. I can help, I can provide some different wordings offline, but, and then when you get a majority of, 4s and 5s, if you're doing like a simple Likert scale, then that's a great indication. Maybe I can promote to the next level, right? So I think, look, there's nothing really beats qualitative feedback. In some instances, just getting a basic, metric is a really, really powerful way to move up. Of course, in the examples of the opt-out betas, as I shared that example, like obviously measuring the number of opt-outs is a really, really simple way to understand whether you should like trigger to the next phase. Once that opt-out goes low enough, get rid of the link and you're done with it. So those are some of the key ones. But often too, I'll have I challenge a product manager to ask them, what do you want to see before it's GA? What questions did you have? What risks? What are you trying to validate prior to going to GA? Like, for example, we shipped a feature that was supposed to like do error prediction, and we weren't exactly sure how accurate it's going to be on customers' live sites, because we can only do so much testing without like going on live sites. So we picked customers that we knew would partner with us, and we wanted to understand that once the accuracy was high enough, then we knew we would promote it. And that's exactly what we did. We collected a lot of feedback. We could constantly tweak the algorithm. We got the accuracy better and better. Our product managers all then eventually said thumbs up, and boom, it promoted itself to the next level. And that's actually a really great example of like challenging each product manager to have a clear set of criteria of how things advance. So, and if you don't have one, the basic survey is a great way to fall back on.
All right, cool. All right. Well, thank you, Scott, for your question there. Appreciate it. And then next up, we have Scotcha. Scotcha can hop in here. Yeah, feel free to. You can feel free to pop your video on now. Hop in here. We can give you.
Okay.
There you go. Yeah.
Hey, just had a question about the sales aspect. When the sales guy comes back with, "Hey, I have the biggest customer and they need this one-off thing," what kind of strategies do you have you used, and would you suggest based on what you've done, and if there are any learnings, how to deal with that? I'm guessing there's different pathways to it, but in your experience, what have you seen and suggest for that?
Yeah, no, it's very, very classic. So couple a couple ideas. I mean, one, of course, there's always the, if your biggest customer wants something and you want to build it anyway, and it's already like near the top of your roadmap, I mean, it could just be extra validation. So if you've already done discovery on it and you're really good about it, and you just hear this from a sales circle, I don't think that's a scenario you're asking about, but that can happen in some instances. So they're like, I mean, look, it's great validation. Look, you know, when that usually happens and it's something that I wasn't thinking about, or like lower my list, or maybe not on my list at all, I was like, great, thank you. Let's set up a time for us to talk with the customer about their pain points. This is a great opportunity to introduce the customer, especially if they're our largest customer, to our product management team who's building the product. It's a great time to create this connection, and we'd be happy to talk about our plans and learn more about it. So then what I typically do is I get on the phone with the customer and I say, hey, look, I want to talk about your needs and I want to talk about your pain points. Before I do that, let me give you a sense of a roadmap. Do you even know what we are working on? And often what you do is like you share people what you're working on, and they're like, oh, wow, like this is really useful. Maybe they want what's on your roadmap more than this thing they told your salesperson. When a salesperson comes to you, they have not validated that, I promise. They have simply validated customers ask for something. So then you give them just but be super polite about it and say, hey, like, so this is what we're doing on, just for context. But you know, now I'd love to like shift into what you're looking for and what your pain point is. And look, what they'll probably do is come at you what they want, and then they go, yeah, what problem you're trying to solve. And often, you know, look, obviously, if it's something you think there's a workaround to, or something's covered at somewhere else in the roadmap, I would always try to pivot those conversations back. But if it's something that's a legit issue, like, oh yeah, like I totally get it, you know, I mean, take it back. You know, I think it's like, look, let me talk to our engineers. You know, we'll understand relative priority, and then, you know, then it becomes a prioritization decision. Depends how big this customer is relative to the other ones. How big this thing is, like how important is this customer to your business? I'm not going to lie to you. I have in plenty of scenarios taken these scenarios and built them. I don't get like personally attached to my roadmaps. It's not like I feel like not worthy because some customer thought of something better than I did and really wanted and willing to pay me lots of money for it. I'm a capitalist. So so some cases, yeah, it works out. I will tell you that in every one of these instances, independent of what I do, if I do ship this thing, I measure it, and if the customer doesn't use it, like I get really pissed. So, and that salesperson's going to hear about it. That salesperson's leadership's going to hear about it. I'm going to, you know, obviously tell the customer, like, what the heck? I spoke with you. You asked for this thing. You're not even using it. So now maybe there's something in the implementation, but this is a critical area for metrics and measurement. Like all too often we ship these things, the customer does not use it. It's one of my biggest pet peeves. So hopefully that's helpful. I gave you a lot there.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, pleasure.
All right, Scotcha, thank you for your question. Next up, we have Michael Scholkop. Michael, if you're there, feel free to unmute and hop in to ask your question.
So unfortunately, I cannot show my video, but I can unmute myself. So my question was
Sound good?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, cool. So first, thanks, Todd, for the talk. So my question was about the pilot users. So in a B2C customer, if you just ask customers who want to be a pilot user, you might get the problem that especially your competition wants to be your first user and get the hand on the newest features. So is it a concern of you? And if yes, how do you counter it?
I mean, to be quite honest, no, it's not a concern of mine. If your competitors want to get a hold of your product and try it, they will. It has nothing to do with whatever you do. They will hire a third party to do it. They will ask their friends for their email addresses and they'll do under that. Like if they care that much to sign up for your thing, they're gonna get it anyway. And I honestly, a competitor that is trying to drive their strategy just by copying you and learning what you're doing is a competitor is not talking with their customers, not focusing how to differentiate and win. I love it when my competitors are focused on me than they are on their own customers. That means I've won already. So embrace it. I think it's a good thing, Michael. Congratulations if that happens. So I think it's a positive.
Okay, thanks.
All right, great. Thank you for your question, Michael. Next up, we have Pratima. Pratima, feel free to unmute and pop your video up if you want.
Hi, Pratima here. Okay, I can start my video now. Okay, so I had a question about early stage startup. What are some of the key to-dos to move from, let's say, sales-led to a product-led org? And what are some of the challenges when you try to move to a product-led culture that you have faced that we can anticipate?
Well, it's a couple scenarios here. So I guess if you're sales-led and sales-led is working, like you're crushing it, you're growing a lot. So let's hold that one for the second one. So I guess the first case is it's not working. If it's not working, it should be pretty darn easy to implement a product-led motion. If something's not working and like, hey, what's it gonna hurt to like try this different motion that you know, could be, you know, better customer experience for our customers. So like that's one. But if it is working, as I'm assuming it's working, I would encourage you to look at like a trial. So how do you trial your software, even with a salesperson holding the hand? It could be a way to test a part of the product-led motion without going full-on product-led. So that's kind of step one. Basically, you could make it very, very easy to start a trial, invite users to, and just see what the heck happens. Like, does it work? Do people like get to the point where they're happy? And then have the sales individuals check in, and yeah, but it's a great way to start that movement. The better and better that trial experience gets, the less and less work sales humans have to do, the more and more opportunity you can take sales humans completely out of the equation, right? So I think that's the way I kind of think about the whole process is like nail the trial and rest becomes easier and easier.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, great. I think that wraps it up for questions. So thanks a lot, Todd, for taking audience Q&A. I appreciate it.